My wife and I have been married for over years and have built a life together that spans love, growth, and shared memories. I am proud of the family we have raised, and my wife, Avery, recently turned. We have 2 teenagers, Darcy, a vibrant year-old, and David, a curious year-old. When we exchanged vows, I had just finished school and Avery was finishing her final semester. Currently, I hold an engineering management position at a mid-sized company. Avery works as a skilled lawyer at a highly regarded law firm. Together, we value maintaining an active lifestyle, regularly hitting the gym and taking part in outdoor adventures such as hiking when the weather permits. My name is Michael Williams, and I think I've created a wonderful life for my family. Even though I've never considered myself a romantic, I take pride in making Avery happy, and our physical contact remains a source of intimacy and pleasure, a frequency that has kept our relationship strong even after 2 decades. Avery's beauty often draws attention, especially when she dresses up for an evening out. Our children bring us priceless pride. They excel in their studies, maintain friendships, and are well regarded by their peers. Always actively involved in their growth, mentoring them with their homework, cheering them on at competitions, organizing family outings, and accompanying them has always been the cornerstone of my values. As an engineering manager, my role is to oversee projects rather than delve into the details. This flexibility allows me to keep weekends free and avoid late nights. Avery's work occasionally requires overtime, but this is rare during high-pressure cases. Our lives are generally stable and satisfying, but beneath the surface, there is a dark current that begins to affect me without my knowledge. A storm is brewing, and the source of the storm is Rick Walker, a confident and arrogant lawyer who recently joined Avery's firm. Rick is the embodiment of confidence, his fit physique testifying to his love of fitness, and his bold manner exuding an aura of invincibility. I first met Rick at one of Avery's office parties. He flirted with her unabashedly throughout the evening. When I expressed my unease, Avery dismissed my concerns, calling me naive and insisting it was just harmless family fun. I tried to explain that, although I believed her, his behavior was disrespectful of our relationship, and although she didn't entirely agree, she defiantly eased the tension and life quickly returned to normal. 6 months later, things seemed unchanged, until Avery focused on a major case that drained 2 years of her career. As the case reached its climax, Avery worked increasingly long hours, and she still kept in touch every night. I had no reason to doubt her integrity. However, what started out as an innocent joke with Rick gradually evolved into something deeper without either of us realizing. When the case was finally over, Avery firmly organized a weekend retreat at the senior partner's cabin. I had been there before and knew the surroundings and our hosts, Chuck and Lou, well. Darcy and David were old enough to manage a weekend on their own. Avery and I decided to go on holiday in nature, where the scenery was picturesque and made you forget the world. The evening started well, although Rick's continued attention to Avery was not lost on me. I chose to ignore it and not bring it up at the end of the weekend. My irritation lingered as we gathered around the fire pit, but I restrained myself from saying anything. The next morning I woke early, smelling the aroma of fresh coffee, and crept out of bed. When the others arrived, I joined Chuck and Lou in the kitchen to help prepare breakfast. I noticed that Rick had taken the seat next to Avery, and when I asked him to give it up for Avery, Avery told me to find another place to sit, which I did, although it hurt, and went outside to collect my thoughts. Avery seemed glued to Rick's side all day, whether on the hike, swimming in the lake, or just chatting, and every time I tried to reconnect with her, she easily rejected me, which made me feel increasingly alienated. By the evening, my patience had worn thin, and I decided to draw a line. I sat down next to Avery before Rick could, and the resulting tension cast a pall over the party, making everyone feel distinctly uncomfortable and frustrated. I left early to go to our room to pack and prepare for an early departure. As I was packing in the kitchen, Avery came in and asked to talk to me. Given her neglect of me all day, her timing was almost ironic. She began to speak hesitantly, her cheeks reddening. Avery assured me that she had never been unfaithful and had never crossed that line, but her admission of an underlying sexual tension with Rick was like a bolt from the blue, deepening my sense of betrayal. So I have to be honest with you. I'm going to be with him tonight. I wanted to tell you beforehand so you wouldn't feel like I betrayed you. There is nothing sneaky about it. I am not that kind of person. No secrets, no lies, absolutely nothing. This is unacceptable. Let me be clear, I cannot and will not consent. I won't agree to it. Our bond has always been real, and I need to protect it. If you do this, there will be real consequences. If you love me, you'll understand. Just once, I need to figure out what this means for me tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be back to you wholeheartedly again, but tonight I have to do this. If you love me, you won't even consider this idea. The mere thought of it is unbearable. Don't do this to us, Avery, I'm begging you. Michael, I hear you, but this is what I've decided. I'll be back in the morning, and we'll talk then. Talk about it. Let's discuss it when we drive home tomorrow. And so she left, and 20 years of marriage came to an end. She thought I would be waiting with open arms, ready to forgive and carry on as if nothing had happened. But she was wrong. We had discussed fidelity countless times, before our friends around us cheated, and we had promised each other, no excuses, no exceptions. Cheating is a line that cannot be crossed. The fact that she told me beforehand didn't matter. It didn't make the betrayal any less serious. I poured the glass of water I'd been holding and didn't need to steel myself for what came next. I went upstairs and started packing my things, leaving hers where they were and leaving her to deal with them. After turning off the lights, I sat on the bed and waited for an hour, until I heard the other people come back into the house and to their rooms. I waited another 30 minutes to make sure everything was safe. Then I grabbed my bag and slipped out, closing the door behind me. The night sky was silent, and I moved silently. My car was parked far away, and it had quietly started up when I pulled into the driveway. It was a little after 2 a.m. The house lights were still on, which meant that one of the kids was still awake. I picked up my bag and walked into the house, where the two kids were indeed watching a movie. "Dad, why are you home? I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow," Darcy asked David, who gave her a curious look and said, "Yeah, where's Mom?" I sighed and said, "Your mother is still at the cabin. She's with someone else in his bed." I replied, "Yes, but they need to know the truth. They have a right to know what happened." Can I put it more gently? Maybe, but at the time I wasn't worried about the blow being too hard. "What do you mean she cheated?" Darcy asked, his voice growing more and more agitated. "That's exactly what I meant. I told her that I had been told that she would be with someone else tonight, that I had not stayed to see it happen, that I had packed my bags and gone home, leaving her to figure out how to get back here on her own. We talked for a while, and then I grabbed my bag and went to the guest room, where I spent the next few hours moving my belongings from the bedroom we shared to the space I now had to myself. The guest room was comfortable enough, with its own bathroom and a decent bed. I collapsed exhausted into bed and fell asleep early. In the morning, my phone started ringing non-stop. Avery's name flashed on the screen. I forwarded it to voicemail, where she had left several messages and texts. Curiosity drove me to check. The first message was casual, asking where I was and mentioning breakfast. Then came questions about why I had left and where I had gone. Finally, they demanded angrily that I come back and fetch her. The last one promised that she would go home by herself and that I would pay for leaving her behind. Realizing that I was fully awake, I got up, washed and dressed. I went downstairs ready for what I knew was about to happen. By now the children had woken up. I warned them not to get involved in the conflict that was about to erupt. They laughed it off, but I could tell that they too were unhappy with their mother. When the front door slammed open, I knew she's here. "Where the hell have you been?" she shouted. I kept my cool. "Fine," I answered. "If you're looking for your dignity, I guess you left it in Rick's bed last night." Her face went beet red. For a moment I wondered if she would actually faint before her anger got the better of her. "How could you do this to me? Leave me there alone. Make me beg you to take me home. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" She shouted, "I was going to make up with you today, but now you've ruined everything." I didn't flinch. It was nothing. Nothing compared to the humiliation I felt. "You know you were with another man, and as for making up, there's no way to make up after something like that. You're damaged goods now. How dare you call me your wife?" She cried. "No," I said firmly. "Maybe literally, but my wife wouldn't do this. My wife disappeared the moment you made your decision, but I'm telling you I was honest. And if I confess, it's not cheating," she argued. "So let me get this straight," I said firmly last night. "Did you sleep with someone other than your husband?" "Yes, I said it. I told you I was going to let him get intimate with you," she said matter-of-factly. "Why else would I spend the night with him? So you did cheat. Whether you told me or not, it doesn't matter. You didn't ask my opinion. You made a decision and ignored my objections. That's betrayal, and that's the end of the story. If you really cared about me, you would let go. If your love was real, we could get over this, she said. What a naive idea. If she had really loved me, she would never have thought of being with someone else. I didn't say much, turned around and headed for the garage to work on my Nova. The car, originally equipped with a cylinder engine and a speed manual transmission, had had its engine replaced with a smaller V and its transmission upgraded to a speed. Nowadays, car enthusiasts are keen to modify classic cars by fitting them with modern computer-driven engines to ensure more horsepower and better fuel economy. I wouldn't argue with that, but I prefer the old way. Modern engines rely too heavily on computers. You almost need an IT degree to get them running. Give me a conventional setup any day with an old engine. You can handle the work yourself. Running the wiring, adjusting a few adjustments, it's fine. But with modern systems, you have to install the electronics, connect the controller, and then pay a small fortune to a professional to program it. And all this before the engine will even turn. Thanks. Over the next few months, Ellie made countless attempts to get me to talk to her. I wasn't interested. She even broke into my room several times late at night. I had long expected her to do, so I changed the locks. To me, we were just two people living under the same roof for the sake of the children, so why didn't I just apply for a divorce? The answer is simple. The children. The thought of becoming a part-time dad was unbearable to me. I couldn't bear the idea of leaving them. Besides, David was only 3 years away from graduating from high school and going to college. Eventually, Avery tried to get the kids involved and get me to contact her, but it backfired. The kids were furious, especially when she tried to paint me as the bad guy. Darcy quickly called her out on it. "Mom and Dad have never said anything bad about you," she said firmly. "But you have criticized him more than once. Don't blame him for how we feel, that's your responsibility." The Williamses had a turbulent 4 months, after which Avery began to try a new tactic. When the children weren't at home, she began to try a new tactic. She dressed scantily, sometimes in lingerie that barely covered anything, hoping to seduce me. I admit the temptation was there. Avery is a stunning woman, but I couldn't stand the betrayal. I couldn't turn a blind eye to it. 6 months later, the truth came out, and she made her boldest move yet. One night, she stood in front of me in a transparent black dressing gown and said bluntly, "I can't go on like this, Michael. I need you. It's been 6 months," she continued, her voice trembling, "and I need you to come to bed and make love to me." My response was cool. "Why don't you call your lover?" Her voice suddenly became hoarse as she denied it. "I don't have a lover. I haven't been with anyone since that night. I'm begging you, Michael. If you refuse, I'll find someone else." The ultimatum was clear. I looked at her firmly. "Just make sure you take them somewhere else. Don't bring anyone to this house. Go to their place, a hotel, even their car, but not here." Her face crumpled and she ran out of the room crying. Actions have consequences, and her actions had brought us here. "I don't want anyone else," she cried as she fled. "I just want you." My rejection may have seemed harsh. After all, she was pretty and it had been months. But every time I thought about it, I could see her in the arms of another man, her colleagues laughing behind my back, saying that the vision was enough to extinguish any desire, no matter how beautiful she was, and that betrayal had overshadowed everything. A week later, on a quiet Saturday evening, I was sitting in the living room, drinking whiskey and soda, and concentrating on reading a book. Avery appeared at the foot of the stairs, dressed as if she were ready for a glamorous evening, in skinny jeans, high heels, and fine jewelry, which reminded me of the parties we used to go to together. Michael said in a pleading tone, "I need you. Please come upstairs and keep me company. If you don't want to, I'll find someone else to keep me company." I put down my book and looked at her. "You look beautiful. I'm sure you can find someone who'll keep you company for the night. But if you really understand this, it's an open marriage. If you sleep with someone else, I'll think that we're both free to find someone else. Which is not what I want," she said in a frustrated voice, getting louder and louder. "I want you. I gave myself to you, and you keep rejecting me. Why? If you don't want me anymore, just say so. Do you want a divorce?" "No," I replied calmly. "What I want is the woman I married, the woman who loves me and is faithful to me. You're not that woman anymore. You broke my trust that night, and I don't know how to repair it. I've already promised to be faithful." She said despairingly, "I will never hurt you again." "After what you've done," I said, "actions matter." Tears streamed down her face. "How long are you going to punish me for this? How long will you punish me? What can I do to make it up to you?" I sighed. All this was weighing me down. There was nothing you could do. It had broken my center of gravity. Now I had to work hard for the children. Once David had graduated, we would go our separate ways. Until then, we were just flatmates. She looked heartbroken. If that was the case, I would apply for a divorce myself. You are free, I replied. But the children are grown up. They can choose the life they want. I know they will choose me. She stared at me for a long time, then walked away. For me, the decision was final. Trust was gone, and no apology or promise could undo that. The damage had been done, and the way forward was clear. The first option was a straightforward divorce. We went through the formalities immediately. The next step was to transform our roles into part-time parents. The other option was unconventional, continuing to live together while granting each other complete independence. This ensured that the children had both parents at home, even though our marriage was only nominal, and we lived under the same roof but led completely separate lives. Otherwise, dating other people was acceptable, as long as we agreed not to bring anyone home. That evening, she dressed up and put on her makeup for her date. Meanwhile, I started going out on dates on my own. A month later, this became our new normal. We got along politely but distantly, like close roommates. We co-parented our children, and to the outside world we still looked like a family. We often went out together to social events to maintain the appearance of harmony. But it didn't take long before my colleagues noticed. I started dating a colleague, and she started dating men she met through her work. Occasionally she would try to rekindle the spark between us, and I would sometimes give in. She was still as attractive as ever, and after a drink or two my resolve would occasionally waver, even though it was purely physical and there was no emotional connection. Eventually the inevitable happened. Was it really over? As I put the other box in the back of the truck, Avery asks shakily, "Is that it?" "Yes, that's it," I confirm. "Thank you for great years," she whispers. "It was," I correct. "I know," she whispers, her eyes filling with tears. 3 years have passed. David has settled into college dorm life, and Darcy is preparing for her freshman year. The house has been sold, and we are each packing up the remnants of our life together. Our divorce is almost final, and we were waiting for the judge to sign off on it. Our assets had been divided equally to ensure that the children's university funds were not affected. She said softly as she packed up her keepsakes, "I still love you, you know." I knew she did, and I whispered back, "I'm sorry. I love you too." She said, tears running down her face, "Will you call me once in a while? Maybe come visit?" No pressure, just to keep in touch. The resentment I once felt towards her had long since faded, as had the deep feelings we once had for each other. I couldn't hate her. In many ways, she had become our friend, and we kept in touch through the children. To be honest, she still had an undeniable charm. I said that birthdays, graduations, weddings, and grandchildren would ensure our paths crossed, whether the children ever forgave Avery for her past actions. Even though their relationship with her was no longer as close as it once was. She bought them a modest 3-bedroom apartment, while I moved into a small house with a land and workshop. Living in the same town meant our paths crossed regularly. We kept in touch occasionally, met for dinner or a drink, and she occasionally hinted at reconciliation. I knew it wasn't in the cards. She eventually entered into a few serious relationships, while I embraced my single life. Marriage had fulfilled its role, providing companionship as well as raising children. The former had been completed, and the latter was no longer a priority. I saw no reason to get married again. 5 years after the divorce, Avery invited me to lunch. She started by saying, "If you say no, I'll understand, but please consider it." I said, "Put down your glass. I have a feeling this is not just going to be an ordinary lunch." I looked around and added, "Where's your boyfriend? Does he mind you meeting me?" She laughed and said, "Andrew knows. He even encouraged me to propose to you. He'd be happy to have a chat with you if you like." "Okay, I'm listening." I said, "Michael Andrew proposed to me," I said, and she announced, "You're very good." I said, "Do you love him? Are you ready to move on?" "I will never fully forget us," she admitted, "but I have accepted our ending. Andrew and I are both happy. I love him, and I'm ready to start a new chapter." "So, what can I do to help?" I asked. "If you need my blessing, you've got it," she said, after a moment's hesitation. "I want you to walk me down the aisle," I said, taken aback. I was surprised. "I want you to walk me down the aisle," she repeated. "Avery, ex-wives don't even invite their ex-husbands to their weddings, let alone give them a role in them. I'm still processing the request, I said, but please hear me out. She explained her reasoning. Apart from my father, who is no longer with us, you are the most important person in my life. You are my last great love. This gesture will symbolize my passing on this part of my life to Andrew, and show everyone that we are moving forward together as friends moving forward together, unconventional as it may be. Her logic had a strange clarity. That evening, I met Andrew for a drink to hear his opinion. He confessed that he had some reservations at first, but he supported Avery's proposal. I even consulted our children for their opinion. In the end, I agreed to this wedding, unconventional as it may be, for it was meaningful. When asked who would be giving the lady away, I replied that her family and ex-husband would be doing the honors. The wedding was a lively affair, and my role in the ceremony was well received. Some of the women, even I, watched Avery set off on her new journey with curiosity, drawn in by the unusual vitality. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction that our story had come to an end, but that the little moments we had shared had been cleverly woven into her new beginning. The story ends here. If you like it, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel.